Welcome to the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast, where we don't take from insurance companies. Here are your hosts, Mr. Jordan Comstock and Mr. Ben Tuine. This podcast is sponsored by BoomCloud Dental Membership Software, www.boomcloudapps.com, and Veritas Dental Resources, www.veritasdentalresources.com. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast. Today I'm your host, or at least co-host. My name is Ben Tuine. Got my trusty co-host, Jordan Comstock.
What's up, dog?
What's up, Jordan? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man.
And then, we also have a man that doesn't need any introduction. Everybody knows our good friend and colleague, Dr. Mark Costas, who is sporting a beautiful sleeve right now that we have the privilege of taking a look at. One thing about Dr. Mark is he's just a good-looking guy, and then he shows up, he takes his sweater off, and he has this nice sleeve on his arm, and it's like,
with ripped arms. It's not just an arm; they're ripped arms.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Mark, it's always a pleasure having you. We feel privileged and fortunate to chat with you on these forums from time to time. Thanks for spending time with us.
Oh man, how many times have we done this, you guys? This is so fun. It's like putting on an old pair of slippers.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about you the other day. You know Joe Coy, right? Everybody knows Joe Coy.
Of course.
And we went to his. Of course, we watched all his Netflix series. And
so funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the guy is hilarious. He's beyond hilarious. And you grew up around Filipino people, Ben, so he is dead on. Like all the little things that he says about my culture growing up the reason why it's so funny for us and my boys, and they're one generation removed from me, and I was one generation removed from my parents and my sister having grown up in the Philippines, but it is so accurate. Everything that he says is so accurate and hilarious.
It's hilarious. Well, we're having our 10-year anniversary in Manila, June of 2024.
Oh, wow.
We're going to celebrate it with our team in the Philippines. This is the Veritas brand, that is. And we're looking forward to that. I always think about you when I interact with our Filipino operations. It's like, I kind of feel adopted into the Filipino culture. And so this year I actually bought that Rosetta Stone series to start learning Tagalog. Yeah.
Really?
That's my goal.
You're more motivated than I am to get engulfed into my culture than I am. I got to do that at some point. I think I would pick it up very, very quickly because if the person on Rosetta Stone is screaming into it, I'll pick it all up because I know all of my Tagalog from my mom screaming at me.
All the cuss words, all the cuss words. Yeah.
So if they raise their volume and they shout it at me, I probably pick it all up like instantly.
So
I always know what she's saying to me. I can't respond back. I have to respond back in English.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but I grew up with a lot of the Filipino culture as well, because my dad lived in the Philippines for 2 years on his mission. So he always cussed at me too in Tagalog, growing up. But also at the dental lab, for some reason, there's a Filipino community here in Utah. They all got to know my dad, so they would show up at the lab all the time. They would bring us the food, and that's how a lot of the times my dad would just do trade, be like, yeah, just make me some like good Filipino food and I'll fix your denture, right?
That's the way to do it.
So I randomly, that's the Filipino cultures. I grew up with my dad, living there for a little bit, and then obviously his friends that are from the Philippines that live here in Utah. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, our currency there is food, and then the peso is next.
That's right.
The greenback American dollar is third, but food is the number one currency for sure.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Totally.
Yeah, live chickens. You trade they seriously do. Like in Samoa, you're trading live chickens for things, or pigs or whatever.
Yeah, it is the truth, man. It is the truth. Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. Today we wanted to talk about some very interesting things. Of course, the news has been out that Dr. Mark is retiring from clinical dentistry with regards to, reaching that pinnacle milestone of being able to sell his practices, which we'll talk about. But
Mhm.
you look at what you've done, and of course, Jordan, you're well on your way there too. I'm kind of like the little guy way behind, kind of
No, you're
observing
not.
and trying to learn. But you
No.
talk about this whole idea behind scaling, business, scaling an idea.
Mhm.
And there's this really interesting quote by a guy named Ray Bradbury. And he says, living at risk is jumping off the cliff and building your wings on the way down. And that could mean something good, but it could also mean something very bad if you take it in a literal sense, right?
Yeah.
But from sort of a business perspective, I've heard this a lot. I heard it from Mark Cooper. Of course, he had a great mastermind a while ago, and a
Mhm.
bunch of other very successful people in dentistry that said, sometimes you just have to take the risk to jump off that cliff and develop your wings on the way down. It's on the job learning, right? But that sort of mentality is a very aggressive form of risk taking that, it works for a lot of people, and sometimes it can be dangerous for others. Just kind of want to kind of go down to the ground level. Dr. Mark, when you started your mastermind and even your dental assisting school before that, I believe, in all in
Mhm.
your practices at that same time, what was it for you in terms of assessing risk as it pertained to business? What was your risk tolerance, and how did that kind of help you get to where you're at today?
First of all, I love that quote. The whole idea of, you know, fire first, then aim,
Mm,
is something that I've kind of, um, that's a big theme in my life. Here's the thing, it took me, you guys know this, it took me 3 years and 21 tries to get into dental school. And all along the way, for those 3 years, I worked less than ideal jobs. I plugged into the corporate ladder for a little bit, and I was a salesperson for a wine distribution company, and lived that life for a little bit. Um, Went on to get into the executive MBA program at the University of San Diego, because I thought that would help me with entrepreneurship. Really, in actuality, the MBA, the executive MBA program that I was getting, while I was working a corporate job, actually was training me to be a better cog in a wheel. It was training me
sure.
to be, um, a better middle manager, and maybe someday, in the off chance that the right person died and I ended up at the right company, I may get up into the C-suite level, even with an MBA. That was the aspiration of most of the people that were in classes with me. It wasn't about entrepreneurship. It wasn't about taking risk. It was about plugging into a company and taking the safe path. And
Hmm.
even the way that I looked at it, even back then, was if I didn't get into dental school, which was a very real possibility, it barely happened. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to follow that corporate path. I was going to take that information that I learned in the executive MBA program and turn it into an entrepreneurial pursuit. So even before I finished, um, the MBA program, I quit my corporate job and I bought my first business. And this is way before dental school. Still trying to get into dental school all along. It was a, very modest Roach Coach franchise. It was a catering truck. We'd drive around and honk the horn, and the construction workers would come out, and my cook in the back would make them French fries and double cheeseburgers and carne asada burritos. And I'd sell like Marlboro Lights and black coffee and Dr. Peppers and bags of Doritos. And that's how I made my living for a couple of years. But it wasn't about how much change was left at the end of the day. It was actually about, owning my own little business and just saying goodbye to corporate and saying, hey man, if I make half as much as I do in corporate, at least I'm the master of my own destiny. And I knew,
Yeah.
I knew that if I didn't get into dental school, it wasn't going to be a fleet of catering trucks that was going to get me there. I just wanted to cut my teeth and to have some say in my own destiny. Right. So, when I finally did get into dental school, I saw the profession totally different than everybody else that was in my class, because I had kind of gone through the gauntlet of trying to make a living without a professional degree, trying to scrap as an entrepreneur. And those were really, really valuable 3 years. So if you could put yourself in my shoes and imagine what that felt like to get into dental school finally, and to know I knew all the stats and I knew, kind of what I was facing, and to know that worst case scenario, I mean, if everything else fell apart as far as my vision for multiple practice ownership, if it all fell apart, I'd still be able to make a really good living working for somebody else, cutting teeth as a dentist. I mean, when the default is dentistry and the default is a single practice, even an associateship in a good practice, I still had like a better living and a better safety net than anything else in my life. So
Sure.
and anything up to that point in my life, like $100,000 at the time when I got into dental school was just a pipe dream. It was like, are you kidding me? Somebody's going to pay me six figures to do anything in my life, And, when I found out that like the average dentist, by the time I graduated was making like 200,000 then, I was like, this is great. I mean, if nothing else, I have this. So I felt as though that gave me the permission to just shoot for the stars, man. Like, I'm going to go for it. There was no such thing as risk at that point. It's like, what was I risking? My net worth was negative $350,000. It's like, if I could get debt for my first practice and then roll the equity in that into the second, third, fifth, sixth, all the way up to 16, I never saw it as risk ever, because the worst case scenario was always better than I had ever envisioned for myself. So that's the way I saw risk. And that's the way I saw building dental practices. When I pivoted over to starting to coach, I took some chips off the table in that I backed off from a 5-6 day work week, cutting teeth, because that's what I did for the first 3 years, Monday through Saturday, 8 hours a day. So those are big, heavy burnout type weeks.
Oh yeah.
I cut that back down to 4 and then 3. And I really, really focused on building the coaching group. And at the same time, didn't seem like it was risky to me, even though I was shifting how some of the money came in. Instead of active income, it was a little bit more passive income, in that I was able to build a stable of coaches, and we were able to build a really solid coaching organization. And that's, now that we're transitioning out of the practice world and out of chairside clinical dentistry after 21 years, now I'm able to focus 100% of my time on what used to be my side gig.
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple of things that come to mind. First, I'm thinking, everybody knows Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad author.
Yeah.
That his belief is just with the way he thinks is, entrepreneurs are a different breed, right? Do you want to be an employee or do you want to be independent? An entrepreneur. Do you think people are born that way? Very clearly, Dr. Mark, it's very clear that as you're kind of going through your journey, those 3 years and just hustling, that you had a dream that you wanted to adhere to. Most people give up halfway through that, right? And they just end up settling and becoming the employee, and they work for others, and they convince themselves that that's the path that they need to live or need to do. Do you think is it an acquired trait to have that sort of ambition, or that level of saying, I'm never going to give up, I'm going to continue to do this? Is it something that you have to really acquire? And if so, is that the reason why a lot of people give up halfway through the journey, halfway through the battle?
It's funny that you guys are interviewing me today, because I could turn the same question back around on you, because you guys are very successful entrepreneurs. You've taken the road less traveled, as I have. We were talking earlier about my heritage. Asian people typically are very entrepreneurial, man. They're scrappers. Immigrants in general are just very, very creative. And they see the world in a different way. This whole capitalistic society, a lot of people take it for granted and don't think the way that us immigrants do. Immigrants think in a different way. It's like, okay, let's just say, all things being equal, I was dropped off on a street corner and I had $10 in my pocket. That's how immigrants think, because in a huge way, that's how most of our ancestors and not one generation removed started in the United States, and most of them did quite well. So I will say, in my personal circumstance, entrepreneurship is in my DNA. It's in my genes. We used to gather around the kitchen table. What we always talked about, we didn't talk about politics. We didn't talk about sports. We talked about business. It's like your uncle over here has a prawn farm. Your aunt over here has a water company, and she just bought her third car that she's going to rent out. She's going to create her own larger rental car agency. My aunt over here had a nightclub. The nightclub, actually, the actual nightclub where they discovered the guy that now sings for Journey.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, she owned that nightclub, and they used to have a karaoke night, and they put those videos up on YouTube. What is it, Arlen? I forget his name anyway. And those videos from the karaoke nights at her club actually were what Journey found, and they flew over there and they decided he was going to be the new lead singer for Journey. Anyway, Arnel Pineda is his name.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it's for me, it was very much in my DNA. And I felt as though my dad made a huge sacrifice to come to the United States. He was he had his MBA, and he had a dual degree in electrical and mechanical engineering. He was a college professor. That's how he met my mom. He left that all to come to the United States to kind of find a better life. But he was an entrepreneur at heart. And when I started all of my businesses, I felt as though he was living vicariously through me, because he took the safe route, stayed with IBM as an electrical engineer, worked his way up the corporate ladder. And he felt it to be the most responsible thing for our family, because, just a brand new immigrant, not to rock the boat and to stick with the upper middle class life. But I always felt, he passed away last year, but I always felt as though there was just a twinkle in his eye whenever he talked about owning your own business and what I was doing. And I thought that was a big, actually, inspiration to me. Even though he wasn't an entrepreneur, he always wanted to be. So yeah, I think it definitely was in my DNA. How about you guys?
Well, first, I was very sad to hear when we learned about your father's passing last year, and
Thank you.
can never stop sharing our condolences for that. And we know he's flying with the angels, with my parents too, up in heaven somewhere, just having fun, having some heaven adobo and lumpia, and all the other fun stuff that's up there.
For sure, 100%.
But it's interesting, and I guess the follow-up question is for Jordan too. I think Jordan, your dad, lab owner, you kind of, when you grow up, you're surrounded by your role models that are entrepreneurs, and naturally you catch the bug, right?
Yeah. Well, I come from a line of entrepreneurs, right? My grandpa, starting with my grandpa, I'm sure I had others before that, but in my lifetime, right, people that I knew. So my grandpa was very entrepreneurial. He had he bought the lab and grew it in Salt Lake City. But he also owned a bunch of real estate, a few apartment buildings, and then he he licensed some of his ideas to other dental labs years ago. I think this is like in the 1950s. So he was always thinking. In fact, whenever I went to his house, much similar to you, Mark, we always talked about entrepreneurship and building companies, right, and building businesses. And same thing with my dad. My dad, obviously is running. He owns the dental lab, and my brothers are very entrepreneurial as well. And growing up, like we never were the most wealthiest family, but my dad put in me and my twin brothers' heads that you got to go start your own company. And even when we were teenagers, he encouraged us to start like a landscaping company. And then we had a band, and we recorded an album and sold it to, we sold it at all of our shows. And that was one of my first kind of tastes of entrepreneurship, with music. And it for some reason got a taste in my mouth that I'm like, I need to figure out how to do this more and more. And then I managed a lab for a few years thinking that I was going to take it over. But then, my story is I wanted to create a tech company because I love, the business models of just technology companies. And yeah, I think for me, just growing up, it was all like everything we did was talk about entrepreneurship and building businesses. And now my friends today, that's all we talk about when we meet up. I had some friends come over the holidays, and that's literally all we talked about is entrepreneurship and business. And it's I don't know what it is, but it may be, yeah, in your genes or or in your blood, or the way my dad and my grandpa talked growing up. I don't know. I've always been driven, and I knew at a really early age that I wanted to own my own company, and I had a vision for myself, right? And I think that's kind of where it starts, is a vision for yourself, and for now my family of all girls that stresses me out too.
Whole different podcast, man. Whole different
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, you guys
totally.
have. So going back to that theme, Robert Kiyosaki, the rich dad, poor dad mentality. You two had the rich dad mentality, right? Where you were, and I say that because I want to kind of give some variety to this topic. Is that I come from the opposite end of the spectrum, where my dad was a lawyer, my mom was a PhD, but they had the employee mentality, right? Where it was.
What does Robert call PhD? Poor, hopeless, and desperate.
Poor, helpless, and
Pretty
desperate,
much.
or hopeless. Yeah. Poor,
Yeah.
hungry. Yeah. I
And I
actually
Yeah.
just listened to a video of him this morning, and he was talking about PhD. That's
Yeah.
funny.
You guys had him on the podcast yet? I had him on mine.
Did
No,
you
but
really?
I watched when he came on yours. That
Oh,
was
yeah,
awesome.
that's right.
Yeah, he's
Actually,
fantastic.
But
Yeah, great guy.
anyway.
He's actually a kind and gentle person, but he gets pretty aggressive on.
Oh, he
his
totally does.
persona.
Yeah.
His persona is like, holy cow, Robert's pushing the envelope in his 70s. Like, I don't care anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, he
yeah.
can get intense. Yeah. Well, and that's why I like him. That's why I've always enjoyed him as a. And speaking about, at least my story, that was the first book I read in like a business book, was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that's what put, I think, the fire in me even more today, is reading that book years ago. It's such a fantastic book and a way of thinking. So anyways,
I wasn't trying to insult your mom, Ben. It's just that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because his dad was a PhD. He ran for the governor of Hawaii.
Yeah.
And as you know, and he lost, and he got blackballed, and that was the spiral that Robert lived through as far as the financial struggles in that family. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good, because his parents knew my grandparents. They lived in Hilo, and my mom's from Hilo.
Oh.
And so they knew each other. I never met Robert or any of his family members, but you're right. My mom, as a PhD, her max salary back in the 90s and the 80s, she probably never made any more than $30,000 or $40,000 a year during that era. And as a PhD, it was sort of a slap in the face. You spend and dedicate all that time to get, what's known to be a very prestigious degree. And even as a lawyer, my dad, he never in American Samoa, he was an honest lawyer. They never voted him in to be in the Senate, because high chiefs, the government in Samoa is half Samoan culture government, half American government, and senators are drawn from the highest ranking high chiefs, and my dad was one of them. But as a lawyer and in sort of an enforcer of honesty, he was never voted into those positions. He was never voted in to be a judge, because all the high chiefs were afraid he was going to clean house and root out all corruption. So he never made more than $30,000. I remember seeing his tax returns in the 90s, and as a lawyer, he never made more than 30 grand, at that time. But I grew up with that mentality that, working and being in those, having tenure, right, and being at a position long term, kind of like what you mentioned, Dr. Mark, with that whole mentality, getting an MBA and hopefully striking it lucky in a corporate position where somebody at the right time dies and you take over their position.
Yeah.
That was my parents. That was sort of their understanding of the world and how to play the game. I had a different view from a very young age. I sort of had a desire to be a business owner, and I never let up on it. I failed multiple times. I didn't start a business until I was 30 years old, and I failed multiple times as a business owner. And I've had I've created businesses that are worth 10 million plus now, that are bought out by big dental companies, one of which was announced last Friday.
Really?
But I never.
Whenever you sold out to one of your businesses?
So I founded that business. I won't mention on the podcast, just to not draw any negative attention on it.
Okay.
But I helped found that business. I was a 33% owner in it. and I won't go through the whole story of it, but in its early stages, I exited, not for the full value that I felt that should have been shared. But that business, based upon what I know, was acquired by another company, and it was valued at 10 million plus last Friday.
Wow.
And I always had this idea that, or at least this energy that, kind of like you, Dr. Mark, that I'm never going to give up on this. I know that I'm going to make mistakes along the way. I'm going to keep fighting and fighting and fighting just to make it work. And it was a dream. So for me, I guess the idea, being taught by the poor dad and poor mom mentality, I kind of sort of had to develop, and I think all three of us, I think you still have to develop that, where you have to acquire the traits of your rich dad or your poor dad mentalities and embrace it as your own, because there's a lot of rich dads that have children that don't have the skill set of a business owner, right?
Yeah.
There's this whole idea that, poor people, strong men are born out of struggling times, right? Strong men and women are born out of struggles. And when they make it in life, they create an easier path for their children, right? And if you're not creating warriors out of their children, 2 or 3 generations down the road, that generation is going to be struggling because they weren't warriors. They didn't fight for their dreams, right? Work hard. So the point I'm trying to come across here is that the listeners are seeing it from both ends of the spectrum, right? Where you both had the rich, you were sort of taught the rich dad mentality. I was taught the poor dad mentality, but some way, somehow, the spark and the dream comes within every individual, right? Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I have, absolutely. Like it totally is. It's on the individual, right? Some ownership, on the individual on that part. I have Ben, my daughters. I have 3 beautiful daughters, and my oldest is 8, and she's growing up too fast. And one day she came to me and she's like, "Dad, I really want to start a company like Boom Cloud." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's go." Right. I'm like, "Let's go." Right. And, I think it's really important, to obviously encourage whoever I'm around. I'm always talking about, I guess, from where this podcast is going, the rich dad mentality, right? The entrepreneurship and things like that. I think it's really important. And when my daughter asked me that, and obviously I have never told her, "Hey, you should start a company. You should," she's 8, right? But I think it definitely is on the individual. And now, because of her little spark of wanting to start a company, now, we invested into some claw machines, and we've placed them in areas where she manages them. Like one's at a pediatric dental office, other at a restaurant. And she's now learning how to manage that. But yeah, I definitely think, to your point, Ben, it definitely is on the individual. Obviously, they can be inspired by people around them, but it's on the individual to realize their own visions for themselves, and to think bigger. I think is really important, to think bigger than just, "Oh, I'm going to scale up the ladder or something." I don't know. I grew up always thinking, and my parents, I think, taught me this, is, "Hey, think big for yourself, make big goals, and go out and achieve them. It just takes time and energy, and you've got it. Go." Yeah. So I think that's kind of my mindset on that point.
Yeah, I think that it's a challenge. It is an ongoing challenge, right?
Sure.
And so everything we didn't have, we want our kids to have. We don't want them to want for anything. My innate desire is for my kids to never have the struggles and feel the insecurities and pain that I did on the come up, especially like, putting myself through undergrad and working full time and trying to do the fraternity thing. And this is after I moved on from football, Ben, but, working full time, a full class load, then trying to be social in the fraternity, trying to stay in shape, all of that stuff led to some significantly difficult times. I mean, really, really hard times. I would love it if my kids never had to experience that. In fact, right now, Bryce has a full ride daddy scholarship to San Diego State University, and he turned down
Sweet.
2 athletic scholarships in order to have the daddy scholarship.
Oh, wow.
So it's like we want the best for them, but at the same time, it does it make weak people? Does it make people that don't have the same hunger that we had? I'm hoping not. I hope that we
Sure.
can coach them through that. But I wrote down to your point, Ben. I wrote this down because I've actually committed it to memory. And you can substitute men for woman, man for female, but it's strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. Bad times create strong men. So you have this circle of, am I creating a weaker generation right now, or is that generation already weak and it's my responsibility to
coach them up,
strengthen them? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you could look at it both ways.
Yeah.
I think so.
I agree.
I think with the difference with your son's situation is he already earned those scholarships, right?
Yeah.
Is he weak? Hell no. I think he did a great job and I think that makes at least as a parent, I'm not there. I have a 12-year-old. I only have one kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I struggle with that too. I struggle with that, being successful and the amount of success that you get. How can you take that in a way where you're giving your family, especially your children, the better times, but setting them up for success in the future, right? So I appreciate you mentioning that, and thank you for memorizing that quote. That's actually a quote that I've been meaning to have printed and memorized, because I think about that quite a bit as I'm raising a 12-year-old that doesn't love sports. He loves drums. He loves guitars.
Ooh, yeah, that's
a blessing, dude.
That's what I'm talking about.
We have 3 athletes in my family, and I just want somebody that's interested in the arts. I wish, but it's all good. I mean,
they can do both.
I mean, you could create amazing things out of that.
Absolutely. So moving along this whole theme of risks. So going back to you, Dr. Mark.
Yeah.
You hired Ashley. I remember your story that you shared at least a few of the conferences that I've been to. You hired her at $10 an hour, right?
True story. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she ended up being the COO, at one point, and
I love it.
Growing and flourishing. And she's been through that whole journey with you from the very beginning, right?
Still with us 12 years later.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
So talk to that, because what's fascinating about one of the things that you said in the beginning was that taking the profits and reinvesting into scaling your business didn't feel like a risk. Whereas most people would feel, taking $200,000-$300,000 worth of profits and infusing that back into growing a business or scaling it is scary, right? So going along that path of reinvesting and building your business, what was it like in terms of like your personal wants and needs financially compared to the commitment to scale the business financially by reinvesting? Can you walk us through that and how you felt and how you did that back in the early days?
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning, it was scrappy, right? In the beginning, it was our first 3. We got traditional financing for our first business, right? And the second 2, the bank's like, no, you gotta show us 24 months of solid growth trajectory in order for us to lend you another dollar. And then even at that point, they're like, when we were able to show that for our group of practices, they're like, well, no, if we lend you money and you go build 2 more, you're going to take your eyes off these primary 3 practices that you built, and you're going to put yourself at risk for having, 5 mediocre practices and potentially not being able to cover your note, which is all they really care about for the long term. So in the beginning, it was scrappy, and it was like owner financing. We would look around for a practice, any kind of exotic financing. I was all about that. It's like, oh, this guy's willing to hold a note. Well, it's not really a nice practice. In fact, can you even call this a practice? It's got 3 operatories, and it's like doing like $97,000 a year. Well, you know what? He's financing. They're going in there. So, in the beginning, it was super scrappy. So in my opinion, it wasn't that risky, because the only thing I was putting at risk was the hours in the day. So I didn't have the money but my currency was hours, was time. And that's what I could trade in the beginning. Then when I was able to significantly build up equity, and now I actually had some money in the bank, and I was able to leverage that as an asset instead of just my time, then I felt very comfortable doing that because, already at that point early in my career, I saw my time as more valuable than the money that was sitting there actually doing nothing for me in the bank.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that all of my ventures and all of my bets and every single time that I took a risk, I was successful. In fact, geez, in the beginning, I took some big lumps, big hits, hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time that before I knew how to vet a deal and before I knew how to do real due diligence, I was still flying by the seat of my pants for a long time. Luckily, amongst all the failures, the majority of those risks came out in a positive, on the positive side. But knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have taken all the risks the way that I did back then.
Mhm.
I would have educated myself further before just handing over a lot of cash, basically lighting it on fire.
There you go.
There it goes. Yeah.
So is there some merit to learning on the job, kind of the way you did? Like if you were to rewind the clock, would you do it any differently?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would surround myself with advisors that knew a little bit more than me. The problem is when you are starting out, you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of success. My first 3 practices were really, really successful. What I didn't realize at the time was that what was successful about those practices is I had amazing office managers, dumb luck, amazing associates, dumb luck, great demographics, dumb luck. None of these were intentional, but I had 3 practices and I was like, first one killing it, second one killing it, third one killing it. I'm a genius. I'm going to buy 5 more, right? What I didn't realize, I didn't know what I didn't know. What I didn't realize was that it was like, as soon as those people started leaving, it started revealing all of my deficiencies, right? So
Sure.
just like Warren Buffett always says, you never know who's naked until the
tide goes out.
Tide goes out, right?
Yeah.
And I was naked, man. I didn't know what I was doing. And so learning on the job, great, but you have to have some advisors in your life that can tell you what it is that you don't know and help you to build an infrastructure, systemization, executive team that could guide you along and start to plug the holes in your deficiencies. That's why I think that whether it's my company or any company, coaching is so important. You have to get around people that have done this before. And if you're trying to go it alone by gut instinct, you might get lucky the first few times like I did, but eventually that's going to come back and get you.
Yeah, I would agree. I've hired and had friends, that have built successful businesses in the past, be advisors to me over the years. And I think that's been super helpful for me. One of my first advisors in my 20s, or mentors, I guess you can say, he's still a mentor today. He started a company, and I think he started a tech company, sold it for 30 million years ago. And I remember going to him, in my 20s, all scared and nervous to just ask him to be my mentor, because I thought he was gonna be like, I'm not gonna help. You know what I mean? The first mindset you have when you go to your first mentor, at least that's what mine was. But I've always been able to find people that have done something better or at a further stage than where I'm at. And I think that's always been helpful. Plus I think I need that big time, because often in entrepreneurship and just building, a company, you feel alone a lot at the top. And I always felt like I was selling on new waters, right? And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. So I've always hired and then had obviously people that I like to hang out with that have built and sold, tech companies. I think that is so important. I just finished we had an advisor here helping me kind of rebuild our sales team and guide me on what I need to do to like put a solid sales team in place and find a solid sales leader. And that was the most valuable time and money spent me and my company, because now, like, we're growing month over month, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Where before, with my last sales team, I struggled. I was worrying about it daily. I was waking up every night, stressed out. So I think advisors and having coaches it's critical.
Jordan, can I ask, what was your due
Yeah.
diligence to find this right advisor? Because I
Great
think
question.
that's the next natural question for a lot of people. Like, I'm willing to invest,
Yeah.
but I'm scared to invest because I don't know if I'm a good steward of this money, and I don't know if I know how to do the due diligence to find the right person.
Oh,
Because a lot of people can talk a great game and say, I am the person, but it actually is a bit of dumb luck, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. You said a phrase that my advisor would always say: "Good steward of money." I think when you find somebody that says that, that's a good sign, because they really. My last advisor that helped me rebuild our sales team, he would always say that, and I think integrity. Really, it's just like finding an employee, right, and a team member, and you do have to do your due diligence. So from with my experience with every consultant or coach that I've brought to help me, it is number one, do I trust this person, right? And do other people trust them? Which was a case for Dustin. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Dustin, Dustin Kenyon. And so his experience was he was part of a fast growing software company, and he helped build their sales and their customer success team. So he had a ton of success there, and I knew the co-founder of that company, and he just said amazing things about him, right? So for me, I used somebody in my network, which I think is super important, right? So experience, integrity, and trust. And I noticed signs of integrity early on because I had a job role open in leadership for my sales team. And he could have easily taken it, right? Being a consultant of mine and saying, "Hey, I can, because he loved our company. He's like, I can come in and I could take over this role." But, and I did ask him, right? But what he told me is like, "Hey, instead of you just like wanting to hire me, because we've worked well together over the past year, I don't want to do that. I want you to have options and choices. So I'm going to help you interview a bunch of people and create competition. And if you like somebody more than me and they have better experience, you hire them. You don't hire me." Right. So little things like that over my relationship with him, I think, caused that integrity and trust. So I think that's kind of how I go about it. And then just using people in my network of people that I trust. If they've worked with somebody before, I trust people in my network, right? Especially the close tier in my network. So that's kind of how I do it. Maybe there's a better way, but it's worked so far.
Can I ask you? Thank you so much, Jordan. Can I ask you
Yeah.
a selfish question, Ben?
Sure, absolutely. I don't think it'll be selfish.
I would love to hear more about the structure of your company and the whole outsourced, like overseas outsourcing strategy that you utilize.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of people that execute that well, and then a lot of people that really, really struggle to execute that well and kind of flounder in that arena. So I understand your business, and I can understand it's very human dependent.
Mhm.
And you're doing a little bit of kind of payroll arbitrage, right? You're going overseas where you're paying a great amount of money to support people overseas because they have a much lower cost of living there. So it's a win-win. But how do you find the right people? How do you manage from afar? How do you make sure that there's quality control? All of that stuff.
Absolutely. I think this is going to sound kind of funny, but you kind of said the phrase there, Dr. Mark. It was initially dumb luck for me. I hired your friend, yourpreneur, Chris Tucker, his company.
My goodness. I know. I've known Chris for years.
I don't know him, but I've read his content. Yeah.
I went to when he used to have his summits in the Philippines in Cebu.
Mhm.
I went. That's where I met John Lee Dumas. That's where me and
Oh yeah,
Lewis
all those
Howes
guys.
started to be really good friends. Ever since then, me and Lewis Howes have been great friends.
Oh wow.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
Continue.
that's where I started. In fact, so to rewind, I had another business with two dentists here in Utah, and one of them had a lab. Oh, you know him, Ray Coleman. I saw him at one of your summits years
Oh
ago.
yeah. Wow.
And
Blast from the past, man.
yeah, I know. And he had a lab in the Philippines, and he, as we were scaling our PPO negotiating business, he made the recommendations. Hey, why don't we have Deidre help with this and help with a lot of the tasks? And so we looked into that, and it was so funny because we started to scale and build a team there. We had 30 plus team members that came out of Ray's lab, and out of the blue, I paid them Christmas bonuses. And the very next day, Ray came back and he said, "You can't do that." I was like, "Why? These people have been paid the same rate for the last 10 years. Don't you think they would deserve some type of increase?" But he said, "You can't do that because now I have to pay all of my other lab members the same bonus." And I started to see an opportunity there where, there was a lot of turn and burn in those positions. People would leave, they would come back, and even with us, they would leave, they would come back once they heard about the bonus structure. A lot of them came back fast. Well, when we dissolved that business and I kind of rebranded into Veritas, I hired Yourpreneur to help me find my first person. And that was back in 2014, May 2014. Well, that person is now the equivalent of my COO, where her compensation and pay over that period of time has I pay her closer to 10 times where she started, kind of like your story with Ashley, Dr. Mark.
Mhm.
And I struck luck because I found somebody that had experience with the outsourcing model, with the motivation model, the bonus models, the things that a lot of the businesses in the Philippines don't offer, especially the outsourced companies that don't offer outsourced virtual assistants there. We implemented a lot of the very similar bonus structures here in the US to motivate people, to attract people that were qualified. So at any time we put out an advertisement to hire a position, for every one position that we're advertising, we get 200-300 applicants.
Wow.
And we built a reputation in the Philippines that we really take care of our people there. We recognize that the cost of living there is cheap, but we don't really take advantage of that to the extent of paying them the minimum wage there. It's funny, 3 weeks ago, they had their Christmas party there, and we rewarded them big time, and they had all kinds of fun, took their families out to Manila, and they recorded the whole thing. Of course, we were here in the US. We didn't want to fly out, at least right now, we don't want to fly out internationally. But my wife was on that call. After the party, everybody went home and we did Zoom. And everybody had something to say, and you could see their homes. And my wife's like, "Holy smoke, every one of your people in the Philippines lives in houses that are nicer than ours." They're beautiful. And it's like, to me, it was sort of a revelation to me that we're doing something right. We're treating people in, would you consider Philippines a third world country in terms of what
most
we
definitely
pay?
third world. Most definitely third world.
Sure.
In the third world, we've been able to attract talent that, quite honestly, is better than a lot of the things that we find here in a first world country in terms of dedication, commitment, willingness to sacrifice, being a team player, showing up, and being there and working hard and willing to learn. The people that we have in the Philippines are just as smart as anybody else anywhere in the world, really. And I kind of feel like rewarding them from a compensation perspective and a bonus motivational perspective, it does work to the extent where that's going to be our home into the foreseeable future in terms of our expansion with labor, is that our model there works, where we don't have a whole lot of problems finding really good qualified people. In fact, we just hired a guy named Jose. He used to live here in Texas, and he moved back to the Philippines. And the number one comment we get from people there is, they're grateful that we're providing opportunities that rarely exist in their communities. So naturally, we attract a lot of good talent just with the way we treat our people there.
Sounds like your strategy at least was to give your people a sense of career pathing and progression, which I think everybody wants progression, right? So, which makes sense, especially when everyone else is looking at the outsourced workers as, let's pay them the lowest and, we can capitalize on that. It sounds like you gave them career pathing opportunities and progression, which is valuable.
Yeah, we tried it here. We tried to build the same model here, but since 2020, it just didn't. It doesn't work. People just don't show up for job interviews. They don't show up. It's less of a commitment. But I think that model works anywhere, right? You talk to Naren. He has a team out of Sri Lanka. He does the same thing where he kind of focuses on his people. His people are his number one priority. And I firmly believe that when you take care of your people will work hard to take care of your clients.
Yeah. That's good. How big of a group do you have out there, Ben?
We're almost up to 50. By the end of this year, with our expansion of services, we're looking to have well over 100 people in the Philippines before the end of the year.
Wow.
It's full time.
That's awesome.
Full time
wow,
people.
That's just imagine that the trickle down effect, that you're making there. It's got to feel good to be able to provide that. It's like I used the term earlier. It's a win-win for sure. Win-win-win. Good for your clients here. Good for you as a business owner, and great for them to be able to get work and do it virtually. I mean, hey man, when you're in the third world, it's nice to be out of the sun and not digging a ditch or on a ship, a cruise ship, which is a huge industry for Filipinos, to be away from their family 10, 11 months out of the year on a cruise ship, doing very, very low level things, intelligent people having to make those kinds of sacrifices. This is a very, very high tier, high level profession for people. Call center work, virtual work, internet type work is a very, very highly regarded profession in the Philippines.
Yeah, and you can offer pricing here on the U.S. side very competitively, right? Where to me, you can, your wages, of course, you're paying people higher there, but you can create an offering structure here in the U.S. that is very attractive to people that need services like verification services, right? And things of that nature in the realm of insurance. But yeah, I love it. Me being from a third world country myself, my heart goes out to the global community where they don't have all the advantages and the things that we have here in the US. The amount of money that one person makes in a month here is a lifetime salary somewhere else in the world,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very intriguing, and good on you, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We kind of went this whole rounds of interviewing each other, and I recognize.
Well, we're all podcasters, right? What do you expect?
Yeah, no, I love it.
I can do this all day, guys.
I know, right? Me too.
We recognize that we're actually at the top of the hour, and we want to respect everybody's time, especially yours, Dr. Mark. We know that you're in super high demand, and just so lucky to be able to chat with you today. So we really appreciate it. So for our listeners, of course, everybody knows Dr. Mark's podcast, but if you're not listening to that, of course, this will be posted in our show notes. It is the number one podcast in dentistry today. And that's been not for me. That's actually what the community has sort of tagged Dr. Mark Costas's podcast as the number one dental show in dentistry. And so congrats on reaching that pinnacle, Dr. Mark. We really appreciate your time today. For our listeners, check us out at sayno2ppos.com if you haven't seen our website to check out more of our episodes. And then, of course, to nominate an office manager or an insurance coordinator, we are going to be promoting a $100 per episode for somebody that has an insurance tip that they want to share with the dental insurance community. And that, of course, will be promoted very heavily in 2023. So if you want to nominate somebody, check out the show notes and contact us for further information. Gents, any final words before we close out?
Oh, I thought you did a great job, Ben.
Both of you guys. It's great to hang out with you. I really, really, really appreciate your time.
Likewise, man.
It's been a pleasure. To our guests, thanks for listening. Until the next time, I'm Ben Tuine. We've got Jordan Constop and the famous and most regarded Dr. Mark Costas. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.